We are talking to Conor O'Neill, the publisher of Deacons Illustrated, the Wake Forest rival site. This is the big week everyone has been pointing to for quite a while. Little bit a twist with UNC beating Wake Forest in non-conference action, 58-55 in a wild affair. But NC State at Wake Forest, 7:30 p.m. Saturday night, ACC Network. This is the game. And Conor knows the Demon Deacons inside out. And one of the big challenges that any team has faced Wake Forest this year has been the wide receiver position, Ja'Cory Robertson, and the massive emergence of A.T. Perry, who is more than made up for the injury of Donovan Green. But when you look at these receivers and just kind of how Wake has been pumping out receivers from Sage Surratt to Kenneth Moore to Greg Dortch to Michael Campanaro, Chris Givens, Kendall Hinton's in the NFL. I mean, it's like a low key wide receiver U of late.
Yeah, right. I'm glad you threw Kendall in there. I mean, he's plays quarterback for 4 years, and they're just like, oh, you're probably not getting on the field. You're suspended for the first 3 games of 2018. We're gonna put you over at wide receiver, and he liked it so much that he came back after going into the portal, and his first full season playing receiver, he has 1,000 yards. It is a little bit of a factory. They've got a really good receivers coach. He hasn't been there for the whole time for the guys that you mentioned, but Kevin Higgins has been here with Dave Clawson since Dave was hired in 2014. He's a former head coach of the Citadel, and he's really fun to watch in practices, and kind of his hands-on coaching is very encouraging. Like you will rarely hear him be in a negative tone. He just keeps kind of uplifting guys, and it works. And the results speak for themselves. You got, like you mentioned, you got Sage Surratt, Scotty Washington had a couple big seasons for him. Ja'Cory, the fun thing about Ja'Cory in the slot is they had these 3 slots that came before Ja'Cory with Tabari Hines and Greg Dortch and Kendall Hinton were all kind of diminutive slots, and they're kind of the quick, shifty guys that have a lot of agility. And Ja'Cory is this big kind of physical receiver. So they make it work, and they really have churned some out lately.
And when you look at A.T. Perry, he might be the tallest, biggest of all the receivers that we've talked. Well, Sage Surratt was a pretty big dude, but he brings a different dimension than some of these other past Wake Forest receivers.
Yeah, he's 6'5", I think 206 on the roster, and he is, I'm 5'9", so anybody over 6 foot seems tall to me, but he seems like a legit 6'5". That's about what Scotty Washington was. And AT came in, and I think he thought he would get a little more time than he ended up getting for his first and second years. And then last year, in COVID year, he looked like he was just starting to get it, and then had an ankle injury that kept him out of a game or two. And then they had the month-long break between losing at Carolina in the same way that they lost last week, and then losing at Louisville. So that really robbed AT of some development time. So he kind of got back with it, and in fall camp, he looked great. And it was a matter of, okay, we've seen it from AT in camps before. We've seen it in spring practices where he'll go out and make some incredible catches, but then the next 3 practices, you forget he's even on the field. So this year you've seen it all come together, and he's become really consistent with it. And that's where it's playing out to where he's having the season that he's having.
And obviously at quarterback, Sam Hartman makes it all go. And, Sam followed Will Greer and played for Will Greer's father, Chad Greer, first at Davidson Day, and then Oceanside
Collegiate Prep, I think.
Yeah,
was the name
Oceanside Collegiate Prep in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, I believe. And, he put up video game numbers. And he didn't get the same kind of recruitment that Will Greer got, who ended up playing for Florida and transferring to West Virginia and then making the NFL. But Sam had major numbers. Gets to Wake Forest, thrown into the fire right away against Tulane in the season opener. And I remember that game. And, the knock on Sam at the time was that he might be too small, which is funny now because he's running over people and he's playing a physical brand of running football. But, how far he's come in a short period of time. And it's just, I put this on the message board. It's mind blowing to me that he's listed as a redshirt sophomore. And I get it, the COVID year and everything else, but like this guy could end up being legit like a 5.5 year starter.
Well, it's not just the COVID year with him. They stole a year in 2019 with the 4-game redshirt rule. They knew Jamie Newman won the job in 2019 in the fall. And part of that was based on after Sam broke a bone in his foot in 2018, Jamie came in and went 3-1 and won them a bowl game in a comeback and won them the game at State in the comeback on that Thursday night. And so
you're bringing up all these bad memories for State fans. I mean, first Tabari Hines and his performance against State, and now we're talking about the tight end on a Thursday night and Jamie Newman's first start.
Well, at least Tabari got to do some good things for State eventually down the road, right? Like that wasn't a completely one-sided. But yeah, they stole a redshirt year with Sam in 2019. They kept him to the 4 games, and I mean, one of those games was a start against Florida State when Jamie had to miss the game with an injury, and Sam came in and won a game in the rain in a mucked up game. And he played really well in 2 relief roles that year. So that was really kind of the year for Sam to step back. He was still called upon and still answered the call, but it was really a year for him to kind of step back and take the redshirt season that you really should have had in 2018 when instead he started 9 games as a true freshman. And that's where then, Jamie Newman transfers at the end of the 2019 season. And it's kind of, okay, we're going to give you the reins again. And how are you going to handle it this time? In 2018, I think Sam was a little immature. I think he would tell you that. I think Clausen would tell you that. He was not ready to be the freshman quarterback on a roster with, you look at the offense that they put on the field in 2018 around him. It was a bunch of grown men. Like he was being asked to play a leadership position and lead players that were 4 and 5 years older than him. And sometimes that's intimidating. And I'm not saying that he shrunk from the moment. He won 4 out of 9 games that he started. It's not like he was terrible. But now last year and really this year, you're seeing Sam Hartman is a leader. He plays like a leader. He has a voice in the locker room. He's been a captain the last 2 years. And it's kind of come together from that end of it. The other part of it is he was small. Like he played his freshman season at 175 pounds. Like he was a toothpick out there. And I remember his 3rd game was a start against Boston College. And he got sacked. He avoided a sack from Zach Allen, starting defensive lineman for the Cardinals right now, I think. And he got up and got in Zach Allen's face a little bit. And it's like, that's good swagger, Sam, but I don't know if you should be doing that to a guy that could probably eat you. And it was either a couple plays later, it was the next drive. He just got obliterated by Zach Allen. And it was just kind of like a, hey, welcome to college football moment. And so that was, Sam now plays at about 215. I mean, you mentioned him running over people. Like he can take hits. You see the hit that he got out of from Desmond Evans against Carolina, where he spins out of it, and all of a sudden Desmond Evans is right there in his face, and he's able to avoid that and get out of it and throw the ball away. And it's kind of a nothing play instead of a 10-yard loss. That's another area where you look at, man, Sam Hartman in 2018 is never making that play. That's either a 10-yard loss or a turnover.
Sure. And speaking of turnovers, Wake Forest has been very gifted at creating turnovers on defense, which maybe doesn't get as much attention when you allow the amount of points against UNC and Army. But, they seem to have talent on defense. Like maybe they could use like one more pass rusher. Hello, Carlos Basham. But, in terms of like ability and speed and size, it's not like they're getting completely overpowered by teams. It just, clearly a few things are missing.
Yeah,
Probably better tackling is one of the things.
Yeah, good luck to anybody that tries to arm tackle Sam Howell. The coaches told us, Dave Clawson told us in his press conference, and then the defensive coordinator, Lyle Hemphill, told me on the phone the next day last week. Basically, if we try to tackle Sam Howell, then we're never going to get him down. And kind of like, well, you guys told me that. I don't know if that message was received by the players that actually needed to hear it. No, it is an opportunistic defense. I know that's the easiest word to use when we're talking about a defense that creates turnovers, but it is. It's got some players that seem to be in the right place at the right time. The one that comes to mind there is Travion Red, a safety who's in his 6th season, and he's kind of, he's one of the poster guys for Wake's developmental program. Like, he bounced around to a couple different positions, and he really kind of felt like he was a player without a position and man without a country. And then all of a sudden he's a playmaker in his 4th season. And he's been a playmaker for the last 2 years. He's been involved in, I think, 7 turnovers, whether they're interceptions, fumble forced, or fumble recovered this year. And they've got a few guys like that. And so it's a defense that there's no way around it. They've taken their lumps. The 4 of their last 5 games, they've been pretty bad on defense. The exception was the 7 points they allowed against Duke, and that was with a bunch of backups in the game. You could kind of blow off the Army game. It's a unique offense. You're never going to see that offense for the rest of the year. You had some guys that had to play positions that they weren't familiar with. But then you go out there and give up 58 to Carolina, and it's how many turnovers can you force to negate the fact that you might give up 30 points on a good performance? At this point, it seems like if they give up 30, it's not a bad day.
And I think one of the things I heard him at the end against North Carolina, there were some injuries in the secondary. Christian Bill gets hurt at running back. Wake has definitely been a next man up program. We mentioned Donovan Green earlier in the when we were talking about wide receivers, and he gets hurt. They don't seem to miss him with A.T. Perry too much. Obviously it's easy to talk about. Could have had Kenneth Walker at running back. Could have had Carlos Basham. Could have had Sage Surratt in theory. These are all guys that could have been on the team. But, next thing you know, they're undefeated and going into the UNC game without, having some of these guys with attrition. But how is the health from when you remember in August to now going into the NC State game? And obviously the Wolfpack have their own injuries with, I think, 5-6 guys on defense that have been banged up and some of them out.
Yeah, I know that there's no empathy here, or maybe it's empathy. Maybe there's no sympathy when I'm going to talk about defensive injuries for what State has had to deal with this year. The biggest concern right now is with Wake's 2 second-year corners, and that's Kalen Carson and Gavin Holmes. We should hear from Dave, hopefully something definitive later this afternoon on their statuses. Dave is very much opposed to any kind of injury updates unless guys are going to be out for the season or out for long-term, diagnosis. in the category of reading too much into something, Kalen Carson has put on Instagram and had some people tell him on Instagram the old like minor setback for a major comeback saying. And in my experience, nobody has ever been told that for like a hamstring pull or, you know, a strained groin, something like that. Like, to me, that is almost an indication that he's going to miss at least the rest of the regular season. With Gavin Holmes, he hurt his hand on a fluke play, and you get to thinking, okay, well, if he's got a hand injury, maybe he can play with a club on his hand. Might not be able to get any interceptions, but at least he's able to play physical cornerback. Because against Carolina, they were playing three corners, and they put Jasir Taylor, who's the third playable corner they basically have, in the slot against Josh Downs. Josh Downs is the best receiver in the ACC. He had 4 catches for 35 yards in the whole game.
Yeah, I would say UNC receivers as a whole were not the problem.
Yeah. I mean, they did the job. They just, when they lost the 2 corners, they had to put Jasir Taylor out there. They had to bring in Isaiah Wingfield, a Harvard transfer. And then they had to go zone a lot more than they could play man, and it just softened up the middle. And that's where you see Ty Chandler breaking loose for a 50-yarder, Sam Howell, quarterback drawing them. And that's where the game was lost on defense for Wake Forest. And, you know, you mentioned they need another pass rusher. They're missing a defensive end, Ja'Cory Johns, who started the first 6 games. He was lost at some point in the off week, and I don't think it's realistic to think he's going to be back for this game. Like, we were basically told he's going to be out a while, and that was after the Army game. So I would think a while doesn't exactly mean he's going to be ready to go anytime soon. They haven't lost any linebackers. Their safeties are actually getting a little healthier, although they just lost Malik Mustafa. Malik Mustafa was the other defensive back. He's a Richmond transfer who played really well against Duke and then was playing pretty well against UNC. They lost him, and that kind of made them thin at safety. Those are kind of the names to keep an eye on. Defensive line, other than Ja'Cory Johns, they seem like they're relatively healthy.
Sure. And how do you see the running back rotation?
That's the one. I mean, Christian Beal-Smith is their leading rusher, and he's a really good running back. They're going to miss him more on special teams than they will in the backfield. He is the best special teams player on the team. He plays gunner. He plays on kickoff coverage. I mean, he just, simply put, he is a great special teams player. Running back, they're going to feel good about Christian Turner and Justice Ellison going into a game. My curiosity, I don't know if Dave would ever disclose this to us. We'll probably just have to see how it plays out on Saturday night. I think it'll be mostly just the 2 of them. They won't shoehorn a third guy in there. I think they had 3 going because they were really comfortable with the 3. I don't think they're going to make a replacement for the 3. I think it'll just be Christian Turner and Justice Ellison. The other options behind them are Quentin Cooley and Amani Marshall. They're 2 second-year running backs from in-state. Amani Marshall's got some East Forsyth teammates on the Wolfpack roster, I think, or at least one. And
a couple.
Quentin Cooley is a Southern Nash kid. So
yes, Donovan Knight territory.
Yeah. So the storylines will be there, but I think that those 2 have kind of been a little bit of a distant 4th and 5th options, and I'm not even sure who the 4th and who the 5th is. They both ran against Duke. Quentin Cooley was in there first, but you could make the argument Amani Marshall looked better 2 weeks ago. But like I said, I think that it'll be mostly Christian Turner and Justice Ellison. I mean, this is where the luxury of playing those three guys all season pays off, in that they're all fresh. And if you lose one, you can still play two, and the two that are in there play at a high level.
And then where can Wolfpack fans find you on Twitter this week? And anything on the horizon coming up on Deacon Illustrated?
Yeah, well, I'll be looking at the defensive woes. I guess that's the best place to put it, the best way to put it. You know, like I said earlier, you can chalk the Army game up as a little bit of a fluke and unique situation, but when you give up 58 2 weeks after you gave up 56, and it costs you a chance at, you know, moving up the CFP ranks, I don't know how realistic it was, but when you're 8-0, and with a 9 next to your name, I mean, it's hard not to feel like, you know, you've got everything to play for. So now they have the ACC championship to play for, and it's going to be really hard to count on winning another, you know, 70-56 was the score of the Army game. I don't know if you ever go into a game against State's defense thinking you're going to get to 70. You don't go into any game thinking you're going to get to 70. So yeah, I mean, to me, the defense is the story. As hot as the offense has been, we need to know whether their defense can rebound again. On Twitter, the best account for me is at Conor O'Neill. That's 1 N and 2 L's _DI. And that's where I'll be.
Cool. Thank you. We appreciate you taking some time.
Thanks, JC. Always a pleasure.